So we're 2 years now into the Obama administration. Has there been any reset with Russia? Do you see any benefits from this policy so far?
The Obama administration prefers to explain its policy towards Putin and his Russia, which is what it is, as a reset. And I would be more impressed if there was a little bit more to show for this. For example, it's said that Russia's become recently a little more cooperative in the matter, say, of the Iranian sanctions. Not very much more. And those gestures of cooperation are more than compensated for on the other side by Russian overtures, directly actually to the Iranian nuclear program and offers to help it, in fact. And I regard that as the crucial test of Russian resetting, if you like. On the arms control agreement, well, that's more the price of it than the policy itself. The arms control agreement, I've seen persuasive argument, might be worth having for its own sake. But if it isn't, it's not worth having for the good behavior that Mr. Putin's displayed so far, either at home or abroad.
Do you still believe in the notion of a nuclear-free world? I mean, this has been articulated by the president as a policy. Do you think that's feasible or desirable?
When the president got his good behavior Nobel Prize, in other words, the prize that you get in the hope you will do something for peace, rather than a whole new concept, an Oscar in the hope that you'll make a decent film one day. Maybe a good idea, actually, better than the rewards for the terrible films that have been one of the soggy and regrettable things he said was he looked forward to a nuclear-free world. At any rate, it's the sort of thing people do say when they go to Stockholm, and I feel sure he did there, and has on other occasions. There are two distinctions to be made here. One is that of, if you like, uninventing the idea of thermonuclear weapons. Some people who talk about nuclear-free world almost seem to wish that that could be done. In fact, seem explicitly to wish that there weren't even nuclear reactors. Bizarre, in common with a lot of green talk, expresses a nostalgia for a pre-industrial, pre-modern society when agrarian relations were more simple and more warm and human, for which I've no nostalgia at all. But I don't take any stock in any of that, but I think the bullets can be taken out of the gun and the gun put in a drawer. I mean, we are still in a condition not very far from launch on warning. A war that could break out for no reason, because of a misunderstanding or a panic or even a technical hunch. I find that an appalling way to be living. I can't believe we can't improve on that. And it would be much better, therefore, much superior to say specifically how one could live without the curse and the fear of a nuclear annihilation than to talk in arm-waving terms about that involve just throwing the word nuclear with the word free together in a sentence.
On this question of Russia, do you think that some societies are not suited, or at least for the foreseeable future, to have democracy? Or is this the soft bigotry of low expectations?
Well, again, to revert to my favorite 19th century analyst and journalist and columnist, Karl Marx and his devoted sidekick, Friedrich Engels. I've published essays about both these aspects. When they weren't being brilliant about the future of British India, they were unusually shrewd about the future of the United States, which they thought to be the great country for free labor, untrammeled social mobility, innovation, and many other positively charged things, in contrast to the frightful millennial backwardness and despotism of Russia that seemed almost impervious to human effort. It's the view that many great Russian writers have taken of their culture. I simply don't feel entitled to pronounce on that. But one reason, I haven't been to Russia enough, I've only been there once. I've read a lot of its writers and writing, and I can understand the idea of the pessimistic Russian soul readily enough given their history. I think the reason I'd want to resist it is because it makes something like the current Putin regime seem like the best they can do. Well, that's plainly not the case. I mean, a country in far worse straits materially than Russia, could do a great deal better than the regime of personal power, in which, for some reason, there seems to be a law that says it must be true, but anyone who criticizes the regime goes missing or is mutilated or silenced in some form or another, in which there's what I consider to be a very dangerous alliance between Russian nationalism and chauvinism, revived under various pretexts of humiliation that I think are very dubious, and a very dogmatic reactionary Russian Orthodox Church, which has now become the clerical garb in which in all public ceremonies Putinism is draped. Very reminiscent, in fact, of pre-1917 Tsarism. And for that reason, to be deplored as a terrible outcome for the Russian people and for people who live within Russia's borders, who are non-Russian, but also for Russia's neighbors, because this expresses a clear nostalgia for days of Russian glory and domination and empire.
Do you think the United States or its allies should make contingent security arrangements with the small countries in Russia's periphery, or is that not worth the trouble, like Georgia or the Baltics?
If I'm asked what responsibility this gives us,
the
menace of a recrudescent nationalist, expansionist, reactionary Russia, with its periphery, or its near abroad, as it's sometimes called, well, I think certainly in the case of the Baltic republics, were annexed by the Soviet Union as part of the Hitler-Stalin Pact, and finally pried loose from that only in the last days of Gorbachev, and confirmed as independent states very recently. I think that's a clear responsibility on our part to prevent any bullying in that case. And I think that the Poles can certainly claim to be able to look after themselves and look as if they probably can. There's a lot of Russian meddling in the Czech Republic, I was about to say Czechoslovakia, which I don't like the sound of. And then, of course, there's a very outstanding case of Georgia, which keeps describing itself, what its present leadership does, is sort of more Western than we are, more committed to our values than we seem to be. Clearly with the hope that we will take that literally, as David Cameron did during the recent conflict, and sort of fly to Tbilisi and declare for Georgia. I don't know, I'd want to know a lot more about Georgian internal dynamics before I'd commit to that.